Hi, my name is Karen Knight and I'm the Vegan Amateur. Today I'm going to be making jackfruit potato stew. So spring has sprung officially at this point, but it is still pretty miserable here in London. It's rainy, it's cold. It is actually St. Patrick's Day today, so it kind of goes in line with the whole Irish thing, the potato stew. I mean, there's no corned beef involved, but whatever, this is the vegan take on that kind of thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I've got everything measured out. I'm gonna go ahead and get started first by explaining that the recipe that I'm using is from veggiesociety.com and that it recommends that you use a Dutch oven. It doesn't actually say there's an option to not use a Dutch oven, but I don't have one. So I'm just gonna go ahead and crack on with my kind of normal, just big pot. So I've already had that heating up on a pretty high heat, so it's nice and hot now. I'm gonna go ahead and put in about a quarter cup of chopped onion and a half a teaspoon of salt. So I'm gonna throw that in. You're gonna hear that sizzle. There's no oil at the moment, but what I'm gonna do is just put a little bit of water in. Hot pan. So the recipe says to sort of stir that around for about 5 minutes until the onions become translucent. So that's what I'm gonna do. In true vegan amateur style, I am making an adjustment to the actual recipe that's on the website because it's got quite a big serving size. So it's just me and Andy. I'm gonna say this feeds 6 people. Or 6 servings, so definitely taking that down. As it's just me and Andy, I'm gonna take that down by half. Guess who's here? Bernie. He's scratching at my leg and looking at me like, where's my dinner? He's gonna have to wait a little while, unfortunately, for him. Right, so this is going to take a little while for those to start going translucent, so you have to be a little bit patient. 5 minutes or so should do, and I keep adding water just to make sure nothing is burning. I'm guessing that this recipe is looking to minimize the amount of oil that you're using, because you'd normally think about doing this kind of thing with oil, so I guess it's got a sort of healthy slant. I didn't actually read the whole blog about it. I am getting a nice onion facial. That's a thing that I just made up. Right, these are starting to go translucent now. Happy with that. And now I'm going to add some herbs and spices. So first thing I'm going to chuck in here is some chili powder. So the recipe calls for 1.5 teaspoons. So I'm going to give you about 3/4 of a teaspoon. The whole liquid to spice ratio. This isn't going to add a massive amount of heat to it. Just in the sort of flavory range. Put no water in there. Right, I've got 2 teaspoons of paprika that's going in. I've got 1 teaspoon of dried oregano. Onion powder. We've got 1.5 teaspoons of onion powder. Got some sticking in here. Get all of that in there. And then I've got 2 cups of, is it 2 cups? Yeah, 2 cups of young jackfruit. So it's about 2 cans worth of young jackfruit. I've broken those pieces up a little bit. Right, I've got some carrots to go in. pushed all my mixture to the side, and I'm putting these carrots, or my jackfruit mixture to the side, and I'm getting these carrots to kind of soften up on their own a little bit. I've also got 2 cloves of garlic going in. And that's going to go on the side with the carrots to kind of soften up a little bit. Well, I did have my my pot on a high heat to begin with. I've moved that down to about medium heat. I've got an electric stovetop, so it takes a while for the heat to go down, and there's going to be a point where we're going to let this simmer, so it's probably good to just take it down. Go ahead and turn it down now. Right, I'm going to mix all that together now. Almost missed. We have some chili flakes. It's supposed to be about half a teaspoon, which means that's a 1/4 teaspoon. So I'm just going to go ahead and measure with about a pinch. Again, not a lot of heat. This is all kind of flavorsome type amounts of chili. And then I'm going to add some vegetable stock next. So the next bit is 4½ cups of vegetable stock. All right, and I'm going to bring this up to a simmer. So my veg stock was hot. I'll let that sit a minute. Whilst it's doing that, I'm just going to tidy up a little. Oh, I almost forgot. We've got 5 sprigs of thyme and 2 bay leaves in there as well. As soon as that's simmering, I am going to put a lid on that and let it simmer for another 40 minutes. So we'll be back at the end of 40 minutes to continue with the recipe. Okay, so 40 minutes of simmering is up, and we're about to move on to adding the next few ingredients, but I thought I'd just give it a little stir and give you a little peek at what things look like at the moment. Ooh. Try not to pour it on the floor while I'm giving you a look. Yeah, so very stew-like, although things are a tiny bit thin from a broth perspective. Let me just give this a little bit of a taste. Ooh, there is a little bit of heat to that. Remember, I didn't think that the amount of chili was going to be too much of a kick, but it is. There is a little bit of heat to that. It's not a burning, it's just kind of a quick heat, and then it's kind of gone, a little bit more warm than anything. Okay, so at this point, I'm gonna put in our potatoes. So that's 1½ cups of potatoes. They're cut into sort of 1-inch cube type pieces, nice chunks. And at this point, we're also going to add some flaxseed. So this is about 3/4 of a tablespoon of flaxseed, milled flaxseed. Now this is supposed to work as a thickener for this, so it'll be much more stew-like, hopefully. All right, so that's going in. Just gonna mix all of that up, and then this is gonna simmer for another 15 minutes. Okay, so the 15 minutes is up there. That last 15 minutes is up, where we had the flaxseed and the potatoes cooking in there. I tested the potatoes and they are pretty soft. They're not super soft, but there is going to be a little bit of sitting time in a minute, so they'll continue to cook in the hot liquid. I've given basically a portion aside for Andy because he doesn't like the big chunks of tomatoes. But otherwise, I would have been adding 1/2 cup of tomatoes, or I will be adding 1/2 cup of tomatoes to the recipe at this point. So tomatoes in there, and then we've got some parsley, some chopped parsley, so about 1/4 cup of chopped parsley. So I'm gonna add that to I'm going to split that between, and it says to hold some back for garnish. So I'm going to give both of these pots a little bit of parsley. And I think you remember that I said that the flaxseed is supposed to be the thickener in this one. I was a little bit worried about it being a bit too thin. I don't know, I probably should have just tested it. So I did go ahead and add about a teaspoon, maybe 3/4 of a tablespoon of corn flour to the mix while it was simmering before. So yeah, full disclosure, obviously if you want to try to see if the flaxseed meal is going to be enough to thicken it up for you, then yeah, go ahead and give it a try. I probably should have trusted the recipe a little bit, but I was just worried. And I want it to be a nice thick stew. I'm going to stir both of these up. And there's a little bit more waiting with this one, so I'm just going to set this aside, cover it up again, set it aside, and let that all thicken up together. Let everything kind of meld together and thicken up, hopefully. Hopefully the potatoes will absorb a lot of the broth and the flavors, and everything will start to come together. Right, so I'm going to take that off the heat, let that cool down a little, just a little bit, and thicken up, and then hopefully it'll be ready to serve. One more thing I forgot, and that is that this is also the point at which you should be testing for flavor and seeing if you need to add any more seasoning. So I should have done that a minute ago. I have to say, it looks really nice. Before I add that seasoning, which I think just from the taste off of that spoon, that's what it looks like. So it looks like for real stew in there, which is nice. I am actually going to add a little bit more salt based on what I just had. I might put some pepper in there as well. I'll add that in a minute. A little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. Again, this is sort of up to you for your own taste. What was there might have been enough, but now's the time to sort of adjust that a little bit. Mix that all together. I think that that's good. Now it's going to sit and thicken and get all comfortable with itself. Okay, see you in a bit. Okay, so we've waited a few minutes, and in that time I've also made a little bit of garlic bread to go with the stew. I'm just gonna give you a little bit of a look at what that is like. So as you can see, it's not super thick, the broth, so hopefully that will be, I don't know, maybe I should have added a little bit more corn flour, or maybe the milled flaxseed didn't quite do the job that it should have done. But either way, it still smells nice. We'll see how it tastes in a second. I've garnished with that chopped parsley that I held back. Yeah, and I'm just gonna grab a spoon and dig in. So it definitely looks like, you know, the real deal from the sort of jackfruit perspective. Let's see how it is texture-wise. Trying to get a little bit of everything on here without having to open my mouth super wide. So we've got the tomato, the lovely broth, jackfruit, potato, and let's just see how it all is. That's really nice. I am glad I stopped the cooking process when I did. I took it off the heat when I did, because the potatoes, they have softened up. They have absorbed more of the flavor from the broth, from the veggie stock and all the other spices and everything, and they have softened up a little bit more, but not so much that they're mush and they're completely falling apart in there. So yeah, I'd say that this is really tasty. From a sort of difficulty and time consuming point of view, there is a lot of sort of stopping and leaving and coming back and doing this and that. There were a couple of phases there, so not super, I don't know, it's easy enough. Like, there's nothing really difficult or complicated going on. It's just time consuming, so I wouldn't suggest doing this necessarily on a weekday night. Probably a really good dish for batch cooking if you have the freezer space and you're able to store some of it away. I've got a little bit left over. I've got enough left over that I'm going to have it for my lunch tomorrow. I'm going to bring that along for my lunch tomorrow. So that's good. So I think that it's a nice dish, but I wouldn't do it if, you know, I was having a busy day or it's something, you know, for a midweek meal. But very tasty, and I think worth the effort as long as you have the time. Right, so that is jackfruit and potato stew. That was from the veggiesociety.com. And I think it tastes really nice. The downside is just the time it took. But otherwise, if you've got the time, then take it and make this one. Right, have a good one.